Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how all this time, for a few years already, the Zelda series producer, Eiji Aonuma, has been teasing the Ocarina of Time remake, and now that it's been confirmed, I think it would be a good idea to take a look back, see what he said, and what he was actually getting at about this remake, because as we've been discussing, there seems to be a lot more to this remake than your typical Nintendo remake here. There could be a lot of new story implications, lore stuff, and perhaps even some gameplay stuff as well. As I talked about in yesterday's video, there's actually a decent amount of evidence to suggest that this is not going to be just a one-to-one remake, but something a bit beyond that. And so have things said by Aonuma, who already has a history of teasing future Zelda projects, when we take a look at what he has said, does it give us any more insight as to what exactly is going on with this project? I think so, and that's what we're diving into today. But first, here's a brief message. Do you find yourself feeling tired, unable to take a good nap during the day from wherever you may be? Then perhaps you are in need of a soft, comfortable sleep mask that blocks out all light. Fortunately, Mad to Sleep, the sponsor for today's video, has just that. A quality sleep mask. This sleep mask has super soft, comfy cushions that cover your eyes and block out all light. It's easy to adjust to different sizes and it feels great to wear. And it's helped me personally fit in just a bit more rest during my days. And signing up now might just be the perfect time to enjoy the summer night sale between June 19th through July 15th to save up to 20% off. So if you're looking to improve your sleep and energy, check out the Mad to Sleep mask using the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. So the first of the three teases I'll bring up today, this takes us back to late 2023, a few months after the release for Tears of the Kingdom, and Game Informer conducted an interview with Aonuma. At the very end of the interview, it was asked if Nintendo would be working on a modern Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, to which Aonuma laughed and said no comment. Now when I saw this back then, I realized it was actually pretty significant, and if you've been following the channel for a while, we've actually documented how there's actually a pretty significant history of Aonuma getting out of character, laughing, or doing something a bit odd, and responding in English even though there are Japanese translators when teasing a future Zelda project. This has happened multiple times, and the confirmation of the Ocarina of Time remake is just one more to prove the point. And so Aonuma at this point did not deny that this project was in development back in 2023. We've heard rumors of this project going as far back as 2022, even though some people like myself are theorizing this could be in the works as early as 2020. And so in this moment, Aonuma chose to not deny that this project would be happening, which was interesting because he had also, in an interview around the same time, denied that there would be a Zelda Dungeon Maker in the works, which didn't happen. This was after what we got with Link's Awakening Remake. That's the extent of a Zelda Dungeon Maker we're going to be getting anytime soon, according to Aonuma. But while this is cool and it's good to keep in mind for the future, for when we hopefully hear about Aonuma teasing other things, it doesn't tell us much about what the remake is. However, there was another interview around the same time with Nintendo Dream Magazine, where Aonuma said something that might indicate a little bit more about this remake. Now keep in mind, this is a rough translation, so some of the names seem a little wonky, but this is what was said. When I heard that he would be called Rauru, I thought it was a very natural progression, but I wonder how many of the people currently playing Tears of the Kingdom actually know about the character Rauru. Laughs out loud. Again, another example of Aonuma laughing when teasing a future Zelda project, but here he's talking about the character Rauru before the Rauru we see in Tears of the Kingdom, and making mention that he's not sure many fans would know who this character is today, which as I believed and now appears to be very clearly the case, he was teasing Ocarina of Time Remake here as well. But what's interesting about this is this focus on Rauru. And when you think about what happened with Tears of the Kingdom, we learn about the first king of Hyrule, the Zonai, Rauru. And so now going back to Ocarina of Time, and now that it's being remade, perhaps with the context of Tears of the Kingdom and other modern Zeldas in mind, the Rauru we see in Ocarina of Time would be named after the first king of Hyrule. And you see what makes this more interesting is that something that we've noticed about the teaser. The narration isn't being done by the Deku Tree. You see, in the original Ocarina of Time, the opening narration is by the Deku Tree. It's spoken of in first person about him. But in this latest teaser for this reborn version of Ocarina of Time, the narrator speaking of the Deku Tree in third person. In other words, the narrator is someone else. Now, it's hard to say with certainty who this narrator actually is, but I feel like the best bet would be Rauru. And so what I'm getting at here is that in Nintendo Dream magazine from 2023, Aonuma was talking about the character of Rauru, which perhaps may have been a suggestion that they are going to be looking to telling us a little bit more about this character of Rauru, the Sage of Light, who, by the way, may also be the owl Kapor Gabora. There are some hints, and Hyrule's story does suggest this, but there's still some debate, so perhaps in this remake we will get even more clarification on that. But we may be already seeing an expansion of this character's role with this narration here if it is indeed him. But what also makes this interesting is if this remake is expanding upon Ocarina of Time, perhaps giving us more content, one of the popular ideas around is to give us a light temple. Rauru just gives us the light medallion without actually having any sort of dungeon to go through to earn it. When we get to that point in the story, it would make sense for Nintendo to go back and add a light temple here. A light temple is actually literally referenced, and it's not the Temple of Time, so it makes so much sense to add this, and would also give us more opportunity to learn more about this character of Rauru and have him more involved. And by the way, could potentially be the location for the tapestry we are seeing in the teaser, because we're not sure where they would be placing this. One idea I've had is perhaps Hyrule Castle, but given that it's talking about the boy without a fairy, it feels like this would be some years ahead of time, so I would assume this tapestry wouldn't actually be found until later on to the game when you're an adult, where you wouldn't actually be able to access the normal Hyrule Castle. So maybe it's somewhere in the Forest Temple, but another idea is maybe it's in the Light Temple, which might make some sense because that's where Rauru would be, who might even be the one narrating what's going on here in the teaser. These are just some possibilities here, main point being, it does seem like we have a golden opportunity here to see the character of Rauru fleshed out more, and that could even mean some new content to explore around in the game. And then there's this somewhat recent interview that came out last December for Gamer.net that's also a translation, where Aonuma said this at the end of the interview. Keep in mind there's also some weird translation stuff going on here, but I'll be saying what it actually means. Age of Imprisonment is the first Zelda title for Nintendo Switch 2. To be honest, we wanted to be the first to do this. Laughs. Again, another example of him teasing things. There's a strong correlation of this, as we've detailed in the past. However, the inspiration we received from this collaboration with Koei Tecmo may be reflected in the Zelda game we create. While playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, please imagine that and look forward to our Zelda game. And so, in this little paragraph here, Aonuma is actually somewhat lamenting that Koei Tecmo was able to get out a Zelda project first before what Nintendo would be bringing, implying that something would be coming very soon, and we surmised, given that this year is Zelda's 40th anniversary, that could be a pretty exciting Zelda project, possibly the Ocarina of Time remake. And now that it's been confirmed, we know that he was referencing the Ocarina of Time remake coming out this year for the 40th anniversary. And what makes this a bigger deal is because that's only part of what's being said here. There is inspiration taken from Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment in this game. So what does that mean exactly? A conversation we've had before about this is that maybe it could have to do with how the story is told and all the cutscenes and such. But more recently, I've been a little bit skeptical of this because, well, I don't think the story told in Age of Imprisonment is really any more special than what we've seen in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I think a more compelling story will be told. I think there will be great cutscenes. I think we've already seen a pretty strong example of that with the teaser. The way the music is being done, it's so epic. And then the narration as well, which to me I think strongly suggests that there will be voice acting in this game. Not just with the narration, but with cutscenes overall. Really though, what I think is the most sensible interpretation of what this tease would be for would have to do with the gameplay of Age of Imprisonment. The energetic combat, because I will say the best thing about Age of Imprisonment, while I'm not super high on the game, I did finish it and enjoyed it. I'm just saying it's not like the best game ever from last year. It's a spin-off title, and that's how it felt to me, a spin-off of the Zelda series. Anyway, its best part though was the combat. Very good, super fast-paced, tons of combos, tons of combinations, and that part was very satisfying. And I've also talked about in the past how I think that Zelda combat has actually been aging not so gracefully. Yes, there are elements of Zelda combat in Breath and Tears that are very advanced when you account for taking advantage of the environment and using the physics in very interesting creative ways, for sure. But in terms of the swordplay, it really is lacking compared to other action-adventure games of this era, especially ones that also have swords and other weapons like that. And what's cool about this is that going back to Ocarina of Time, where they overhauled Zelda combat into 3D, and there was so much inspiration that went into that, this might be a really cool opportunity for them to take some inspiration from Age of Imprisonment and perhaps other modern action-adventure games like the Soulsborne games, make the combat more involved than the original Ocarina of Time or 3DS releases, and use this also as an opportunity to test out what can be done with Zelda combat and modernize it in a way where it's not falling behind, and carry this forward into open-air Zelda when that's ready, I assume a few years from now. And thinking about this a little bit more, we've already seen Nintendo do this in the past with Majora's Mask 3D, where they were actually willing to change how the boss fights were handled. Many people were not a fan of those changes because it felt like they made things just a lot easier and more accessible, but I think the idea of going back to the boss fights and reimagining how they could be done would be great, especially if we're reworking the combat here. You look at what we can sort of tell from the visuals, you look at how amazing the music is, they may want to really make things more grand and epic, and I think redesigning the bosses, changing how we go about fighting them, could also serve that as well. And so if they're revamping the combat here, there could be some huge opportunities, especially if they're also reworking how the boss fights could work. And so I just think there's some golden opportunities here, and looking at these different hints we've gotten from Aonuma over the years, he may have been telling us a lot more than many people were willing to believe. Of course, we won't know for sure, until we start to see a little bit more about the game. And before closing out here, I'll come in with a little bit of a bonus thought. With just how much evidence has been continually piling up over the years of how much Aonuma teases future Zelda titles, when he came out and talked about Skyward Sword on Switch at that Zelda concert so many years ago, when he teased things regarding a thief and that had to do with Link's Awakening Remake, and then he confirmed it afterwards. Or how just about half a year before the reveal of Echoes of Wisdom, he was talking about Zelda playing a starring role in a Zelda game. And the various teases I outlined in this video having to do with the Ocarina of Time remake. And that still doesn't even cover everything. Another one that comes to mind, the more I think about it, he teased Majora's Mask as well, Majora's Mask 3D. So he's had a hand in teasing future Zelda projects for such a long time. But now, with all of this well established, and I think more understood by more people, what else might he tease in the future? He is getting up there in age, he should be approaching that time where he will be retiring or taking another step back in when it comes to Zelda development. So there's a possibility he may not be teasing as many things as he has done over the years. That said, we've also seen Miyamoto tease some things regarding Mario, and he's a little bit ahead of Aonuma in years here. Maybe Fujibayashi, the current Zelda director, will start to tease things in a similar fashion to Aonuma, or maybe he'll develop a different strategy. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye. And don't forget, you can use my code SLEEPRESTART when checking the link in the description below for the Manta Sleep Mask.